Shedeur Sanders just made an announcement that is reportedly creating real tension behind the scenes in Cleveland. And now many fans think Browns owner Jimmy Haslam is starting to panic about what comes next. With the franchise already under pressure, Shedeur's growing influence may have completely changed the situation. In April 2025, Shedeur Sanders was supposed to hear his name called on the first night of the NFL draft. He expected to be taken in the first round. He would not be selected until the fifth round, on day 3 of the draft. His slide set off a series of debates that continue to this day. Sanders was the talk of the 2025 NFL draft. After many projected him as a first-round pick, he slid to the 5th round, going 144th overall to Cleveland. Nobody in the football world could quite believe it. For many gatekeepers, Sanders epitomized everything corruptive about the college game. With newly liberated players free to transfer and free to make millions in name, image, and likeness deals, Shedeur became the embodiment of the NIL era, with players equipped with resources and social media power. Sanders was more boisterous than most, wearing expensive chains around his neck, driving luxury cars on campus, and by many accounts taking a casual, almost dismissive attitude toward his interviews with NFL team executives. According to some reports, the Giants had targeted Sanders but became so turned off during the interview process that they switched to Jackson Dart, whom they took at number 25 on day 1. When the Cleveland Browns finally selected him, the scene inside the war room told its own story. Sanders' selection raised eyebrows, and questions have persisted regarding whether Browns Executive Vice President of Football Operations Andrew Berry and head coach Kevin Stefanski wanted Sanders, or if owner Jimmy Haslam recommended them to draft him. The latter theory was fueled by the live reaction to the pick in Cleveland's war room, showing Berry and Stefanski appearing to be dissatisfied after the pick was announced. The speculation was immediate. Cleveland Browns owner Jimmy Haslam denied that he forced general manager Andrew Berry to draft quarterback Shedeur Sanders. Haslam's comments came in a response to a reporter's question concerning a narrative that he influenced the Browns' selection of Sanders. Following his freefall to the 5th round, Eric Mangini popularized the idea that Haslam made the call to draft Sanders. He suggested that such occurred during an appearance on FS1's First Things First, just after the draft in April. Haslam's own words didn't exactly put the speculation to rest. "If you'd have told me Friday night driving home, y'all are going to pick Shedeur, I would have said that's not happening." He insisted it was Berry's call. At the end of the day, that's Andrew Berry's call. Andrew made the call to pick Shedeur, but not everyone bought that version. One fan on social media captured the cynicism perfectly. If Shedeur was trending to make the 53-man roster, it would have been a Haslam pick. Since he is still the 4th QB on the depth chart, of course he becomes an Andrew Berry pick. That tension, the owner distancing himself from a polarizing decision while simultaneously being the one most invested in the outcome, is where this entire story begins to unravel. And into that volatile mix, Shedeur Sanders walked into Huntington Bank Field and started doing exactly what nobody in the front office expected. When Shedeur Sanders arrived at Browns training camp in the summer of 2025, he was 4th on the depth chart. Haslam had been pleased with what he'd seen in Sanders, the former Colorado standout, who began camp 4th on the depth chart, and Gabriel. Ahead of him stood Joe Flacco, the grizzled veteran. Dillon Gabriel, the 3rd-round pick from Oregon, and Kenny Pickett, acquired in a trade. It was, by every measure, a crowded room for a 5th-round quarterback who was supposed to be a 1st-round talent. Sanders started the year in a depth role, as veteran Joe Flacco was Kevin Stefanski's starting quarterback. But when Flacco was traded to the Cincinnati Bengals following Joe Burrow's injury, Dillon Gabriel, who was drafted 2 rounds before Sanders in a shocking NFL draft for the Buffalo's product, took over the role. He would be Gabriel's backup, but after the latter's struggles and injury, it was Sanders' time to step up. Sanders won his first ever start against the Las Vegas Raiders and went 3-4 across 7 starts as he remained the starter for the remainder of the season. 3 wins in 7 starts doesn't sound like much, but for the Cleveland Browns, a franchise that has cycled through quarterbacks at a dizzying pace for 3 decades, it was at least something to hold on to. The statistics, however, painted a deeply complicated picture. Sanders' 19.0 adjusted QBR, 68.1 passer rating, and 56.6% completion percentage had him ranked last in the league among qualified players. In total, he passed for 1,400 yards with 7 touchdowns and 10 interceptions. Those numbers were not just bad, they were historically bad. Out of 42 eligible NFL quarterbacks in the 2025 season, Shedeur Sanders ranked 41st in passer rating. Sanders threw more interceptions than touchdowns. He had the 5th worst QBR since QBR became a stat, making it the worst QBR of any Browns QB, with at least 6 starts in the history of the franchise. And yet somehow, improbably, controversially, Cleveland Browns quarterback Shedeur was named to the Pro Bowl. Let that sink in. A quarterback who ranked dead last among qualified starters in adjusted QBR was selected to represent the AFC in the annual All-Star Showcase. He became the first Browns quarterback since Derek Anderson to receive the Pro Bowl honor. The selection itself became a lightning rod, with critics calling it a mockery of the accolade, and supporters arguing the numbers couldn't capture the full reality of what Sanders endured. Some observers argue his rookie numbers failed to capture the instability surrounding the Browns last season. Cleveland dealt with coaching uncertainty, offensive inconsistency, and protection breakdowns that made life difficult for any young quarterback trying to develop confidence. He was working behind one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL, throwing to one of the weakest receiver groups in football, and operating under a head coach in Kevin Stefanski, who was already considered a lame duck. Despite all of that, Sanders himself stayed measured. "Nothing is promised going into next year, so I stay in the moment, stay in what I have to do now to even be here next year," he said in December 2025 as the season wound down. That humility was notable from a player the NFL had tried to humble during the draft, and it set the stage for an offseason that would shake the entire franchise. To understand why Jimmy Haslam might be panicking, you have to understand the financial catastrophe sitting at the center of the Cleveland Browns quarterback room. The Haslam's tenure since 2012 has been awash with losing off-field issues and controversies, most notably the signing of quarterback Deshaun Watson to a record-setting contract. Because of injuries and Watson's league suspension in 2022, that deal has set the franchise back for years, leading to the team's current QB uncertainty. That contract, fully guaranteed at $230 million over 5 years, remains one of the most criticized deals in NFL history, and the financial handcuffs it created are suffocating the organization's ability to move forward cleanly. As Skip Bayless pointed out on his show, Jimmy Haslam paid $230 million guaranteed for Deshaun Watson over 5 years, and he still owes him $46 million for next year. That is not a number you can just walk away from. Bayless didn't stop there. He called Haslam a Jerry Jones wannabe, and laid bare what he believed was really driving the Browns' quarterback decision. "I believe that Jimmy Haslam badly wants Deshaun Watson to be the starting quarterback and a successful starting quarterback next year. To prove him ultimately right," Bayless said, "the implication was devastating. The owner's ego, not football merit, was determining who leads the franchise." The Browns finished the 2025 season with a dismal 5-12 record. The Browns underwent significant organizational changes after a disappointing 5-12 season. Former head coach Kevin Stefanski was fired, and Todd Monken was brought in to reshape the offense and potentially stabilize the quarterback room. Barry kept his job, and Monken, fresh from serving as John Harbaugh's offensive coordinator with the Baltimore Ravens, was tasked with sorting out a 3-headed quarterback monster. Head coach Todd Monken told NFL Network at the NFL owners meeting in Phoenix on Monday that the Browns haven't gotten that far yet in terms of naming Sanders their starter heading into the team's offseason program. Then came the early returns from voluntary minicamp, and this is where the panic truly begins to take root. Mary Kay Cabot of the Cleveland Plain Dealer recently reported that Watson emerged from the minicamp as the favorite. She also expressed this opinion about the situation. "I think they should declare Watson QB1 ASAP and let the first-team offense start to cook. There's no time to waste." Watson, who hadn't played since October 2024, who tore his Achilles tendon, who was suspended by the league, who went 1-6 in his last stretch as a starter with a career-worst quarterback rating, was reportedly ahead of the guy who actually finished the season under center. Watson ranked 39th on QBI in 2024 and is coming off a torn Achilles tendon that caused him to miss the entire 2025 season. For Sanders supporters, this was all the proof they needed that the organization was rigging the game. And Haslam's own words at the NFL owners meeting in Phoenix in late March only added more fuel. "I was in Cleveland 2 or 3 weeks ago and was working out early, and he was coming in." Haslam said he's been in Cleveland most of the winter, and I think that says a lot for his dedication to wanting to be an NFL quarterback and understanding what it takes. His body looks better. He's been working hard. It's hard for a lot of college kids to understand what it takes to play in the NFL, and particularly quarterback. Shedeur got an education in that, and my instincts are he'll come back ready to play. It sounded positive on the surface, but underneath those words was the implication that Watson was still the preferred option. A preference rooted not in performance, but in the financial albatross that Haslam himself created. The owner who spent $230 million on one quarterback was now watching a fifth-round pick build a brand. That might make the entire investment irrelevant. Then Shedeur Sanders did something that no one in the Browns front office could control. He started building an empire outside of football, and he made sure everyone knew about it. New year, new number for Shedeur Sanders. The Cleveland Browns announced that the second-year quarterback will return to the number 2 jersey for 2026, donning the number he had worn throughout his football career until his rookie season. Sanders posted #2 on X and shared photos on Instagram in a Browns jersey with the new number. Captioning it, "Thank you, God." His father, Dion, commented, "Yes, Lord." This wasn't just a jersey number switch. This was a declaration. For Shedeur, wearing the 2 is a matter of identity. It was with this number that he shone in college, both at Jackson State and Colorado, under the watchful eye of his father, the legendary Deion Sanders. Throughout high school and college, Sanders had worn number 2 and even incorporated it into his branding. Colorado, where Sanders played 2 seasons, retired his jersey last April. The financial implications alone were staggering. Usually, the NFL requires a player who changes his jersey number to purchase, at retail cost, all jerseys in the remaining inventory. In 2021, Vikings running back Dalvin Cook opted to stick with 33 because it would have cost $1.5 million to change to 4. Sanders' number 12 was the 5th best-selling jersey in the 2025 offseason. Think about that. A 5th-round pick with last-place quarterback stats had one of the best-selling jerseys in the entire league. That is not football performance driving merchandise revenue. That is cultural influence operating on a completely different frequency than anything Jimmy Haslam has dealt with before. Sanders has an existing deal with Nike, which makes and sells player jerseys. It's possible that Nike and the NFL have granted Shedeur a dispensation, given the raw number of number 2 jerseys that likely will be sold. The Nike partnership itself represents something far larger than a shoe deal. A partnership with Nike is qualitatively different from local business sponsorships or mid-tier athletic apparel contracts. Nike represents the pinnacle of sports marketing, and their decision to align with Sanders indicates a belief in his long-term marketability. And just weeks later, Sanders returned to the University of Colorado and walked at commencement. The Cleveland Browns quarterback returned to Colorado and officially walked in the graduation ceremony on May 2, 2026. He finished with a 3.9 GPA. His father, Coach Prime, couldn't contain himself, dropping a proud 2-word reaction to that academic achievement. This wasn't just a player collecting a diploma, it was a calculated brand moment, executed with the precision of someone who understands that his value extends far beyond any football field. The announcement that truly rattled cages, though, was the totality of what Sanders was constructing. By securing this deal now, Sanders is not merely seeking immediate financial gain, but is establishing a corporate relationship that typically precedes a professional career. In the landscape of the NFL, where shoe deals can be as lucrative as playing contracts, entering the professional draft with the backing of Nike provides a significant competitive advantage in terms of visibility and prestige. For Jimmy Haslam, this presents a problem that money cannot solve. You have a quarterback on a dirt-cheap 5th-round rookie contract who is simultaneously one of the most famous and marketable players in the entire league. If you bench him for Deshaun Watson, a player the fan base has largely turned against, a player with a deeply troubling personal history, a player coming off a catastrophic Achilles injury, you are not just making a football decision, you are picking a fight with one of the most devoted and vocal fan bases any young quarterback has ever assembled. This is what panic looks like when you're an NFL owner. It's not screaming in a boardroom. It's the slow dawning realization that you've lost control of the narrative, and the player you're trying to suppress is becoming bigger than the franchise you own. The Cleveland Browns are now hurtling toward a reckoning that has been building since the moment Shedeur Sanders' name was called on day 3 of the 2025 NFL Draft. It's only May, and yet the Cleveland Browns already have a quarterback controversy on their hands. Browns coach Todd Monken announced earlier this year that Dylan Gabriel, Shedeur Sanders, and Deshaun Watson would battle for the starting quarterback job. Monken appeared on local radio in Cleveland and made it clear he wasn't ready to name a starter, contradicting the idea that Watson had already locked down the position. "Would love to have a starter before training camp," he told the hosts, but he wasn't there yet. That statement alone blew the lid off a simmering controversy. Because if the head coach is saying one thing and the local beat reporter is saying another, and the beat reporter's information is believed to come from ownership or the front office, then who exactly is running the Cleveland Browns? The Shiloh Sanders situation only made things worse. Longtime Cleveland Browns reporter Mary Kay Cabot gave her take on which quarterback should lead the NFL team in 2026, while sharing her story about veteran Deshaun Watson taking an early lead in the QB competition. Cabot offered personal insight. "I think they should declare Watson QB1 ASAP and let the first-team offense start to cook. There's no time to waste." Sanders' brother and former Buffalo's teammate, Shedeur Sanders, made his thoughts clear below Cabot's post on Instagram. "Go make a sandwich, Mary," Shiloh Sanders commented, per TMZ Sports. The comment exploded across social media, drawing accusations of misogyny and sparking a national conversation about the Sanders family's relationship with media criticism. Cabot has been a fixture at the Plain Dealer and Cleveland.com covering the Browns for more than 30 years. In 2025, she became the second female reporter to be honored in the Pro Football Hall of Fame with the Bill Nunn Memorial Award for a long and distinguished career in football. On Thursday, Cabot responded to what was clearly a sexist comment from Shiloh Sanders. Shiloh didn't apologize. Instead, he doubled down. "If you're going to be a reporter and report facts," Sanders said about Cabot on his Twitch channel. He accused Cabot of having an agenda against Shedeur and questioned her credibility. In a lengthy monologue that only intensified the backlash, Browns coach Todd Monken did his best to steer clear of the controversy. Appearing Friday on 92.3, The Fan in Cleveland, Monken was asked whether he'll be addressing the team about the potential problems. "That's a man making a comment on social media," Monken said. "That's someone reporting something they believe. That's their opinion. Fine, I'm not my opinion. I didn't say that. Our daily inner workings with the quarterbacks and the players is going to mean more than what is said outside of there." But the damage had been done. The Browns were no longer just dealing with a football question. They were dealing with a cultural phenomenon. Shedeur Sanders, through no visible action of his own, had become the center of a firestorm that touched on sexism, media credibility, ownership ego, and the fundamental question of whether the NFL could accept a player who refused to shrink himself. Shedeur himself dropped a cryptic message on social media amid the entire controversy. "Think about a person's opinion," the text read. "In the grand scheme of life, it means nothing. We often give opinions power when we react to them and make them seem valuable, and when asked during OTAs to reflect on his draft experience a year later." Sanders was characteristically measured. "I don't look at anything as a negative," he said. "When you start looking at things as a negative, that's when you grow spite and hatred, and nothing positive comes out of that." He then added something that should terrify every person in the Browns front office who is betting against him. "So now I feel bulletproof." That is the announcement, right there. Not just the jersey number, not just the Nike deal, not just the graduation, or the GPA, or the social media following. It's the totality of it. Shedeur Sanders is telling the Cleveland Browns, and by extension, Jimmy Haslam, that he cannot be broken. He cannot be buried on a depth chart and forgotten. He cannot be replaced by a $230 million injury-plagued quarterback just because the owner's pride demands it. A lot of media members have suggested that the Browns have a strong interest in Arch Manning, who some predict will be the first pick in next year's draft. If the Browns have that selection, the season obviously didn't go as planned, so it would make a lot of sense to take somebody like Manning and hope things work out. The long-term implications are already being gamed out. If Sanders starts and the Browns struggle, Cleveland could be in position for the first overall pick in a draft class headlined by Arch Manning. If Watson starts and the Browns struggle, which recent history overwhelmingly suggests they will, the franchise will have burned yet another year while the quarterback of the future sat on the bench watching. Bleacher Report's Alex K. wrote, "Despite the promise Sanders showed in year one, it remains to be seen if he'll go on to have a successful NFL career." The QB finished having completed an unsightly 56.6% of his throws while getting picked off 10 times and taking 23 sacks. There are too many things that need to go right for Sanders to have a sophomore breakout. He may eventually develop into a franchise passer, but expecting a massive year two leap isn't realistic. Maybe. But what those analysts consistently leave out is what has changed around Sanders. Cleveland used the 2026 NFL Draft to aggressively reload its roster, selecting players across multiple offensive positions in hopes of improving protection and playmaking around whoever wins the starting quarterback role. The offensive line has been rebuilt. New weapons are coming. A new offensive coordinator is installing a fresh system. The infrastructure that failed Sanders as a rookie is being systematically replaced. And here's the part that should keep Jimmy Haslam up at night. The new number 2 in Cleveland being the guy would be a terrific outcome for the Browns, with him on a 5th-round rookie contract. A lot of the attention in the next few months will be on whether or not Sanders can be QB1 in 2026. If Sanders proves to be the answer, the Browns will have their franchise quarterback on one of the cheapest contracts in the league, while simultaneously paying Watson $46 million to hold a clipboard. That financial humiliation would be entirely on Haslam's shoulders. But if Haslam forces Watson into the starting lineup and Sanders never gets a fair shot, the owner risks alienating a massive, passionate, social media-savvy fan base that is watching every single decision through a microscope. He risks losing a player whose cultural and commercial value already exceeds his football statistics. He risks becoming the cautionary tale that every future NFL owner studies when deciding whether to let ego or evidence guide their franchise. The 2025 NFL Draft was supposed to humble Shedeur Sanders. It was supposed to teach him that the league is bigger than any individual. Instead, a year later, even Sanders has conceded that he could have done a better job of handling the pre-draft process. But he hasn't conceded anything else. He's changed his number, signed with Nike, graduated with honors, survived a season behind the worst offensive line in football, earned a Pro Bowl nod, and emerged from the wreckage with a simple, terrifying message for the people who control his football fate. He feels bulletproof, and Jimmy Haslam, he's the one left scrambling.